So to look at the tweak functions, I'm actually going to just select everything in the scene and delete it all. I'm just going to really quickly make a stamp of a square here, and then I'm going to go into paint mode, and I'm going to use that pink. And when you're dealing with paintings, there are some functions that have to do with the direction that you make your paint stroke, and so I'm going to make the paint stroke in a very strategic way. I'm going to go from left to right, and I'm going to do a sort of a little swoosh, and then we'll see. Right. We'll look at the things that you can do with that. And actually, there are other things like the Fleck changes that we haven't even really looked at, and I'm not sure.
Oh, like the. Okay.
So if we go up into painting, the Flecks, by default you have the heavy Fleck.
My goodness.
These are all, so the heavy Fleck gives me this series of sort of squares.
Yes.
There's all these different Flecks that you can get into.
Circle, square, good golly.
You have these options also in your Sculpt.
Okay. Wow.
You have all the same Fleck options.
That's amazing.
And you also have in modes, you can change the coat modes. I'm sorry, in the style modes, yes, you have an option to apply Fleck. So if you don't like the Fleck that you used, you can go into the style mode and you can choose a different Fleck, and you can say, I don't want the heavy, I want the dots, which is one of my personal favorites. And you can go in here and you just change the heavy to the dots, and I'll just do it on the square also, because the dots are actually nice for showing the tweak functions that I'm going to be showing. So you can always change your Fleck style later.
So has the cube been changed to dots?
The cube's been changed to dots, and you're not going to see a really big difference until I start to tweak it a little bit. If you want to change Fleck types, you need to make a new painting or a new sculpture.
Okay.
The Fleck type is inherent to the whole thing as you see it from assembly mode.
Okay.
So that is inherent to the entire object. And each of these things is like one piece. When we're talking about gameplay thermometer, this is a thing and that's a thing.
Okay.
And if I go in and I add strokes to the painting or add stamps into this, it still is one thing as long as I'm doing it scoped in.
Scoped in, okay.
Scoped in meaning when I go in here and everything else is grayed out, and then I...
Remind us again how you activated that mode?
Yes. So the way I activated that was through pressing L1 and X, and you're scoped in, and then you can start adding shapes and stamping and etc. And the same thing with painting. You can scope in and you can add more brush strokes. But for right now, we're just going to have the one shape here and the one brush stroke here.
So that becomes pretty natural then to scope into a thing and make adjustments.
It does. It does. And something you have to remember is when you're getting when it's time to start something new, you can always cut it up later in sculpt mode.
Right.
That's not the case with paint mode, and it's really a good idea to get in the habit of not trying to cut things up later. You can go over here and you can say start a new sculpture, and oops, let's get rid of that prompt. And then you'll have the same brush and the same color and everything that you had previously, but you're working on a new thing.
Right.
And you can do the same thing in paint mode, and it's especially important in paint mode because it is really hard to cut up a painting after the fact. So you can go start new painting and same everything that you had, you're even working on the same plane, but it's a new thing. And that means that if I go like this and I make a scribble.
And you're on the same plane as that previous one.
Yeah, well, you're wherever the imp left off. So this wasn't on a flat plane exactly.
Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
But now I could go into this new thing and, whoops, I'm getting ahead and jumping into the tweaks here. Whoa. But I could go back to that style mode and now apply, I could go back to the heavy Fleck that we started with, and I could apply that to this one, and it doesn't apply to the other paint stroke that's a separate thing.
Cool.
But I'll get rid of that for now, and I think we'll just get on to the tweak menus.